I lived in Northern California, and about when I was like 14 years old, I had a paper route, and I saved enough money on the paper route that I could go buy. I bought a '56 Chevy, and so I had the car before I could actually drive. So I got this job with a speed shop down the road, so I could work on this car. That was important to me at the time. But my mother stopped me as I went out the door and said, "Burke, I always thought of you as being an architect." Well, this was kind of new to me. This was kind of the first I heard of this architectural thing. And she said, "So I got you a job with a friend of mine, an architect, and I want you to go try that." And I had doubts about that. I wasn't sure that's what I wanted to do. So I go there. Well, I figured I could always work part-time at the speed shop. So she said, you can still do that. So I go to work for this architect, and I had to do whatever they needed done. You know, it wasn't a big firm. And so I ran a lot of blueprints and things. But as what I found is they were a kind of a creative bunch of people. And they were very accepting of me. I was, 15 years old, and just, I could barely drive to get there. And it was so damn much fun that I thought, well, there is something to this. But after I got to high school, I started to move around. I worked for 3 or 4 architects in the area, and they all were kind of a step up. And I got to see what they were doing. I was looking at the blueprints, and I said, oh, this is a plan, this is a section, this is an elevation. And then I thought, I think I could do that. And so I asked him, I said, is it okay if I, draw some of these? Well, I was kind of good at that. And I found a certain joy in it early on. And so 16, 17, when I got out of high school, I kind of was on a path. I've only had 2 jobs. I delivered a paper, and I worked for architects at a very early age. I was accepted to go to Berkeley, but the problem with going to Berkeley was the school was so packed that you had to take all these other classes before you could get into the architectural program. I didn't have time for that. And they said, well, they've got a pretty good school at the University of Utah. So I enrolled here, and when I got here, and I got with my other students in the graduate school, which was a great bunch of guys, I feel like having all that experience working for, I worked for architects for 10 years by the time I got here. So I knew what was coming, I knew what it was like, and I knew the downside of it, I knew the upsides of it, so I felt like that was a big advantage. I kind of was in my element there, and I enjoyed it very much. In the summers, and even during the earlier years, I had time to work for some of the firms here in town. I worked for a lot of really good, wonderful people in Salt Lake. I worked for MHTN, Briggs & Christopher. I worked for them for a while. My last year before I graduated in architecture, I went to San Francisco and worked for Worcester, Bernardi & Emmons. It's kind of a prestigious firm there. I worked there for the summer. They told me that you need to be at work by like 8:30. So I got there the first day at 8:15, and they had all these. It's an all open environment, so all the desks were all laid out. Everybody, so no cubicles, just big space. Everybody was in one big room. So when you walk in, everybody sees that you've showed up. You walk in, and they were already there working. The second day of work, I was late, and I thought, well, maybe I ought to walk through the back door, because it was like 8:45, almost 9. And sure enough, everybody's there, and I walk in with these boots on this wooden floor, and everybody turns around, and here's the new kid. Who does he think he is? And I'm walking up with everybody, take my little spot on the desk, and it took us a while to sort that out. By the time the summer was over, we kind of come to some sort of an agreement there that I would try the best I could to get to work on time. It never quite worked out. But they said, we want you to come back when you finish school. So I said, yeah, maybe I'll come back. So I go back to school. I'm going to go back to California. There was no work in California at that time. Everything had just gone down. It was 72.
72.
Yeah, 72. Now, in Salt Lake, everything was booming. So I took a job with EDA, Edwards and Daniels Architects. They took me right in. They put their arms around me. We had a great time. And I explained to them that I was only here for like, well, not very long, a year. You know, and when things picked up, I was going to go back to California. Well, as it turned out, I never made it back. I stayed. I enjoyed working here. I hadn't worked there 3 weeks. And I get a call from Frank Ferguson. They had just got the Symphony Hall project, okay? And I'd interviewed with him before I went to EDA, but they didn't have any work at the time. So he got the job, and Frank said, Burke, come on over, we want you to help us work on Symphony Hall. And I said, well, that sounds wonderful. That's a great project. I'll be there. When do I show up? He said, well, we'll see you on Monday. So I have to go back to the office, EDA, and talk to Ralph and said, Ralph, I'm sorry, but I feel like this is an opportunity. I'm not going to be here forever anyway, and this is a project might be fun to work on. And I like Frank. And he said, Burke, you can't go chasing around every single great job. You can't go bouncing around. That's not going to work. You can't do that. I'm telling you, we're going to take good care of you. We want you here. And so I had to go tell Frank, you know, thank you, but you know, we're going to have to pass on this one. But I will say this. Frank Ferguson was a no-nonsense sort of a designer. He was one of the simple is powerful when it comes to design. Simple is enduring. Simple is just basically better. And he understood that very, very well. Create an environment that allows these things so it enriches your life. You know, the building itself isn't going to enrich your life. It's these activities that the building evokes. If you go to Symphony Hall and you walk out of Symphony Hall and it's a simple building, but it evokes all these wonderful feelings, and that's what makes Symphony Hall a piece of architecture and not just a building. I thought Snowbird was a piece of architecture. I mean, talk about context. Christopher did that, Ray Kingston worked on that. Here they go up on a hill. There's no Swiss chalet up there. There's no woodsy things. There's no frou-frou. It's simple. It's powerful. It's made out of concrete. It's there. That building's not going anywhere for a long time. It says, I'm here to stay, and I live in the mountains. Let's see, why did I stay here? Well, I'll tell you why. I was given some nice projects to work on. I worked on the initial 81 expansion of the Salt Palace on South Temple. I was given the responsibility to design the building. And there's a certain point in this process of design and working with clients that is really an enviable kind of a thing to have happen. So there was a lot of expectations. I was excited. It was a big project. I'm a young guy. I don't know. I was 25, 26 years old. And put together a presentation, and you've got to go in and make this first initial presentation to the client. And this is what I've learned is so wonderful magic about this work. It's what keeps you coming back. So you've got all the drawings, you've got the design, and it's the first time the client is saying, there's this certain joy that takes place when you reveal this project. They've been waiting for it. You want to be sanctioned that you've done the right thing. And when they see this as you're presenting it and they get excited about it, I tell you, it's like it's compelling, you know. And then you get to do this again and again on every project. It's always kind of the highlight of the project. There's still, at that point in the schematic design, which is what I was doing, I made let's pick a number, 100 decisions about the building. We have thousands more decisions to make about the building. After the building is presented, it's accepted, the owners put their arms around it, this is great. And then we're going to make more decisions about this building, but those other 1,000 decisions that are going to be made to make it a good building, in my mind, those other decisions all those decisions are made in support of this general strength, big idea that was created, which is driving the bus. That I do like about the profession. So I've always liked that. I always like that very first time the client gets to see the building. Then, as Judd and the firm got older, there was times for promotion, and we were trying to make way for new generation to kind of take over. I was offered a position to be a principal in the firm basically a year and a half after I was there. It was relatively short, and that might have been a ploy to keep me from wandering off, and it worked. It got me committed to the firm. It got me involved in the business workings and all the drama that takes place of that. Those guys eventually were moving on. My responsibilities got larger. With that evolution comes the fact that all this joyous work I got to do, like designing buildings and then designing another one, got throttled back a little bit, because now, as it turns out, that as you move into these other positions, you've got to go out and get work. You've got to prepare. Preparing for interviews is half the thing now the architects have to do. We don't get to do all these fun things. The last 7, 8 years, we had enough people involved. I kind of could back off and enjoy myself a little bit more, getting back to how it was when I first worked a little bit and could kind of pick the projects. And my role kind of did take on a mentoring role a little bit towards the end, and that was very fulfilling. That was a meaningful thing, and I felt good as it got towards the end. I felt good. I felt like we made a good contribution to the community. I felt good about my body of work that I was able to be a part of, and I felt like we had a lot of good people coming up to kind of keep the big story going. I think that the one that stands out the most is when we were doing the working for the Olympics, and we were awarded the ski jumps and the bobsled luge and some interpretive buildings up there. It had a cast of thousands to it, but I think it was a pretty good building. It's not really almost a building. It's almost kind of a non-building, but it's a built environment. And the thing that I think we're proud of, it was an opportunity to work on a building type that there's only a few of them or there's only like 20 of them in the whole world. It's not like libraries where there's thousands of them. There's museums of thousands. There's just, Olympic ski jumps, or, there's, I don't know, pick a number, 50 of them in the whole world. So you have the opportunity to work on a very unique building type and put it in a context of a very unique spot here in Utah. And I, working with a lot of good consultants, a lot of good people on this. My job was, quote, to design the ski jumps, but trust me, there's a lot of good people on this one that deserve some credit. So the ski jumps were cut into the hill. Instead of having these ski jumps like a lot of them in Europe where they're sitting on top of the hill and there's on stilts and they're big, we actually cut the building into the jumps into the hill. And by doing that, it didn't seem so much in your face, and it also allowed the prevailing winds to come around and blow up the jump, so that these European jumpers who just live for this stuff, they liked the jump. They liked they could go further in the building. So it was pretty simple programmatically, but it was I think an appropriate building. It was laid out well on the hill. The materials, there was a lot of concrete. The buildings I like the best that I've done, again, are simple. I don't do a lot of fussy details. I don't do, we're not building violin here. That building was not a violin. This building is it's going to be here a while. So it's rough, it's simple, it served its purpose well, and it's going to be there for a long time. It's going to be a relevant building for a long time. I'll tell you one. Okay, so this Salt Palace is one. We did that in '81. We're going to have this exhibition hall, and we're going to have, we want you to have a lobby coming down the South Temple. Well, the problem was, it's right next door to Symphony Hall. I mean, really, it's just 20 feet apart. So we designed this really slick, white, form-conscious thing, which, by the way, it's a kind of a signature building in some regard. It won some AIA awards, but you know, so it was nice, and that was always nice. But if you look at it in context, so you're looking at the street, and there's this white, shiny step building and with a lot of geometry to it, right next to this very elegant Symphony Hall. Okay, now, what was going on there? I mean, who was showing off there? I mean, that was kind of a showing off thing in my mind. At the time, it seemed like fun, and showing off was fun. As time went on, it bothered me that building was next to that building I really loved so much, and I didn't like this building anymore. Fast forward 25 years. So now, the county wants to expand the Salt Palace. It was a design build project, so the contractor was brought on board, and the contractor hired us because of our past experience with the building. So we find out that the county wants to expand that section that I had done in '81 a little bit further, but they also needed a huge amount of meeting rooms, about 90,000 square feet, a big chunk. And so they turned it over to like 4 or 5 architects to come up with a solution to show them how to manage all this. Well, as you look at that plan for the Salt Palace, there wasn't a lot of room for this 90,000 square feet of meeting room space, which is very, very important, very lucrative, very important to have that in there. So we're sitting there looking at this, and we're in a design meeting, and we're looking at the thing, and it's like the contractor and I came at the same time. I said, you know where those meeting rooms ought to go? Yeah, he says, they ought to go right where your lobby, that big lobby that's been intrusive and been offending the the Symphony Hall for so long. That's where it ought to go. It's the right size. It's right where it's supposed to be. So here I had an opportunity to take a disappointment, which was that building, which at the time seemed like a good idea. That was a disappointment. Now, if you're in this business long enough and you hang around long enough, you finally get to go back and fix these problems. Now, that building we replaced there is just a building. It's not a piece of architecture. But we calmed it down. We simplified it. It's got some bricks. It matches Symphony Hall. Burke feels a lot better about this than I did about that before. Yeah. There's a few things. A lot more women, for one thing, and it was good for the culture. It's good for the creativity things. It's good at so many levels. There used to be no women in the offices. Now there's a lot of them. I think that as a profession, we understand that we need to embed ourselves with this community. These buildings are for the community they serve. It's important for us to listen to them and not get so damn full of ourselves. The good thing about computers is we can understand buildings so well. We can go through like we've never done before. It makes you wonder, how did we ever draw these buildings by hand and anticipate all these conditions in the building? How did we ever do that? Computers, we know every little inch of this. We know where everything is. We know where all of our clearances are. We know what it looks like. We know everything about it. They can do these structural acrobatics, and we can do these visual images that get so seductive that we think this is a good thing, and we're not stopping to ask ourselves, just because we can draw it and it's beautiful, should we build it? Commit to the profession. Commit to the work you're doing. The more you commit to it, the more you're going to really enjoy it. It has so much to offer. Make sure you're all in on this thing, because you can kind of not be in it. Don't take it too seriously, but kind of understand the value of it and the contribution you're making to the community, because it's a good thing. You're doing a meaningful thing here. It's not a frivolous thing you're doing here. So don't take it for granted. lean forward and care more. Don't pull back and care less, because it'll come back to you, and you're gonna, I feel very good about, there's things I changed, but I feel very good about the career and the way it's defined my life and the quality of my life it's brought me, and I have absolutely no regrets, and you shouldn't have, and so don't let it, so lean into this thing a little bit, because it's a good thing.